Hey guys, it's Norm from Tested, and I'm here with Steve Sansweet.
Hi, Norm.
You are a Star Wars fan.
I am a Star Wars
Maybe
fan.
the Star Wars fan?
I wouldn't put it on... Anybody else can be a Star Wars fan, and as big... Fandom is not how much you own, it's your passion.
But you do own a lot.
I do own a lot, and I have a tremendous passion, enough for a lot of people.
Yeah, so we're here in your office in Rancho Obi-Wan up in Northern California, where you have amassed about 30 years of collecting.
Make that 35, 36.
36
yeah,
years?
Oh, yeah.
30 plus years
Yes, indeed.
of collecting Star Wars memorabilia. How did this all begin?
Well, I grew up loving science fiction and reading some of the classic novels, and then I had some of the early toys in the 50s, and then I came back shortly before Star Wars came out and started collecting some of the old Japanese robots and space toys, and then they were always too expensive. I wanted this robot, it would be $200. A year later I could afford $200 and it would be $400. And Star Wars came out and really grabbed me and took me, like so many other people, to another world. And then some of the stuff started coming out. It was one of those really weird things when you look at toys and movies today. All that stuff is out in the market 6 weeks, 8 weeks before the movie opens. This was a movie where there was nothing immediately available. And so it was the demand that created the goods rather than the other way around. And I think that's one of the keys to how some of us who were there back then, really got that passion for Star Wars.
+30 years, this is not so bad, this collection
Yeah,
here.
well, this is just my office.
Oh, this is in the collection. Let's go actually check out the real collection.
Okay, come on. So that was the library. We have Star Wars books from 37 countries and 34 languages. But again, this was all sort of the appetizer. Let's go to the main course. A little bit of stuff to look at in here. Every museum should have a house band, so we've hired 4 of the Bith musicians to play. Sometimes they'll do cantina songs, sometimes you never know what they're going to come up with. And right behind them is the actual door from the cantina that was discovered on a trip by a friend of mine to Tunisia in 1995.
Still there.
Still there.
After all these years.
Being used as the guy's door to his chicken coop, the guy who rented the cantina building.
I hope it did its
job. Yeah.
So these cantina players, these guys are animatronic.
They're animatronic. They were behind the soda counter at FAO Schwartz in Las Vegas before they went bankrupt. And on the live bankruptcy auction site, they were listed as alien mannequins. So I had no idea whether they would work or we could put them together, and they do, and it's great fun.
And those one of the kind of pieces, those are the ones each with their own story.
And that is the best thing. So this is not just walking into a museum and looking at things and reading little... It's a 2.5 to 3 hour tour by me with all of the personal stories about the fun things behind objects, how they came about, how I collected them, the great finds I made, and the stupid mistakes I made, because we all do both.
Poor impulse control.
It's
totally all right.
It's all about the stories.
Now, behind us here, this piece that you talked about earlier was one of your favorites.
I think this is, to me, one of the most important things in my collection. Ralph McQuarrie, as we all know, was the master of coming up with the visual look of Star Wars. And that clearly was Ralph McQuarrie's original art of Starkiller, the composite character that became several characters. Well, when Ralph was here 6 years ago, he said, "I remember painting that." And I said, "Wait a second, you hand-painted the sign?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "That's my logo. And you know what? I still like it better than theirs. So there's an original, probably the world's only Ralph McQuarrie hand-painted Star Wars banner.
So looking around this museum, and you've designed this as a museum now. This wasn't always the case. You had this in storage.
It was sort of, oh, well, this is my storage place for all of these things. But now we've turned it into a nonprofit museum. We can give tours. We've organized it by type of object and somewhat chronologically too. But, you know, there are crazy things that are together. You'll find bootleg and fan-made stuff along with the actual licensed product because it just seems to work. So it's sort of in my head and my assistant and friend, Ann Newman, who also has put all of this together.
So Steve, we're here in the front bay of the museum. This is what you built out, you said, about over 10 years ago.
Right.
And it all started off with the action figures.
Yeah, the whole collecting. There was stuff out there before, but everybody wanted the action figures. And Kenner came up with the idea to do about a 3 3/4 inch scale. But the first action figures weren't even ready for Christmas of 1977. So they sold this basically empty box. You sent away a coupon and you'd be one of the first to have the first 4 action figures. It took a while to get them because Kenner didn't sign the contract for Star Wars until a month before the movie opened. It's amazing that there had never been a successful license for a motion picture. Star Wars changed the world when it came to that because people really wanted this stuff. And so once again, it was the demand that was causing the stuff to come out. And the figures led to finding that scale figure, led to building vehicles that fit those figures and play sets, and it was a whole world.
And so you said it started off with those original 12 figures, and were you able to collect all 12? Or?
I bought all 12 originally from the store, and just like everybody else, I opened them up.
Oh, you opened them.
Put little sticky things underneath, and they were on my shelf with the other space toys. And then about 2 years in, I decided I wanted to try to get them back on the card, and so I asked a toy dealer friend of mine to put together as nice a set as he could. And back then, the figures were selling for $2 to $3 each. He put together a really nice set and charged me like $175, which really was sort of high for those days. And then the son of a gun picked out one figure after he sold me and said, are you interested in this? And I said,
looks like a standard Jawa figure.
Yeah, except this was the standard Jawa figure that I knew about. It had a cloth cape. And I said, did some fan make this? He said, no. He said, it's some sort of variation. It's the first time I heard that awful word. And I said, well, okay, well, how much do you want for that? I'm not that crazy about it. But he said, $45. And I said, you know, I just paid you $175. To make a long story short, I decided to pass. I went outside, put my key in the door lock, and something grabbed me and forced me to go back. It was, I don't know what it was, but I paid him the $45. And so today, I mean, we don't talk about values very much, but today this may be worth $100, $200. In this condition, $2,000 plus.
Collector's intuition.
Yes, I've also had de-intuition too, and have passed on some things that would have made me money, but things that I didn't need. You always have to figure to buy what you love. Because if you start buying things like, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money on baseball cards or comic books, everybody's thinking the same thing and the market collapses.
Can't beat the market.
Buy what you love.
And then as we move further into the back, you have something called the treasure room.
The treasure room is...
Let's go visit the treasure room.
And gracing the treasure room, we have the actual marquee letters from opening day on the Loew's Orpheum Theater from 1977, which ended up in a kid's bedroom in the Bronx and then finally ended up at Rancho Obi-Wan. So it's fans preserving parts of the history and treasures of Lucasfilm and Star Wars that otherwise wouldn't be with us today.
And really, it's a treasure hunt for you.
It is. It's a scavenger hunt, a treasure hunt. It's not just me, it's a lot of other fans going out there and preserving that history, which is really cool. So One of my favorite pieces actually wasn't originally. This is an amazing Millennium Falcon diorama with part of the Death Star hallway, and it was done by a licensee in France named Atticus. And I knew from the pictures that they had made just an amazing design inside and filled it with all kinds of, little parts and pieces of the Falcon, and then they sold these metal figures that you could add to it. But when I got it, I was very disappointed because it was clear to me that without lighting, you really couldn't see and get the nature of how cool a piece this was. And then I hired a local guy, a guy named Randy Newbert, who lighted something else for me, and he came in and one day transformed this into something that is now one of my favorite
custom
pieces.
light up.
So it's a custom light up, so it just shows that even with manufactured goods, you can add so much more to them, and the Falcon diorama is proof of that.
And then some of the items were actually things built specifically for you by other fans.
Yes.
For example, over here.
Here there's a guy named Randy Cooper in Florida who makes model kits for other people, but he builds individual ships and sometimes lights them, paints them. And so we have the Jawa Sandcrawler, and then the amazing Star Destroyer, which he didn't have time to light, which is how I met the other Randy Newbert, and he lighted that and then that. And I'm sure we'll be doing other things in the future for Rancho Obi-Wan.
Now you also have actual memorabilia from the production of Star Wars.
I do.
These are actually pieces from the actual Death Star
These
surface?
are pieces from the Death Star surface, including hand-painted cardboard towers, sort of the Potemkin village of the Death Star. So when you have all these things down and the cameras go on like a banshee, you really the eye doesn't catch the individual pieces. These are mostly the smaller scale, so when something is really close up, they'll have a larger scale cannon or a gun that moves or something like that. So they're pretty amazing pieces. They're all done out of extruded foam. ILM would make the molds and then send them out, and these would be produced. The Yoda also is from the original molds from The Empire Strikes Back. Because Yoda was made out of latex, it wasn't meant to last, and it hasn't lasted. But using the original molds, the head, the hands, the feet, the cane, and the pan flute are all from the original molds of the Yoda that was used in Empire Strikes Back.
A first generation mold. And then back there you have what looks like the Millennium Falcon.
That is a very unusual piece because I love behind the scenes pieces in the making of the movies. And the Falcon, the full-size Falcon that was built for Empire was 60 feet in diameter, weighed about 20 tons. And the superstructure was so complex that they were afraid just 2D plans wouldn't be enough. So ILM actually built a plastic superstructure of what the frame needed to look like, sent it to the UK. The full-size ship was built in a former Royal Navy shipyard in Wales, covered, and then cut into sections and trucked over to the studio near London. So there's a lot of behind the scenes in production, as well as stuff that was made for the movie, or things that look like they were made for the movie but were actually made for fans, such as this gaffy stick. And this is made of an original Fiji War Club or a Totokia stick, which they still make for tourists, but it's the same Totokia sticks that were used to make the original gaffy sticks. And they're all different based on the size of the wood, the burl, the quality of the sculpture. And then you can see that the prop crew thought it wasn't quite dangerous enough, so they added this steel spike. By the way, there's a familiar name to these. It's called a skull cracker.
I can see why.
I'm glad.
Appropriately named. So in your collection, how many things do you think you've collected over 35 years?
Well, we have a database that now has about 95,000 items in it, and we don't think we're quite 1/3 of the way there. So we're estimating about 300,000 separate pieces, including, lots of paper, behind the scenes work. It's all according to how you count these things, but yeah, at least 300,000 pieces. If we ever get there in my lifetime, I will be very happy, but I'm not pushing it. This is a popular culture museum, and the whole purpose of this is to inspire kids, inspire adults. So many people were inspired by Star Wars to go into all kinds of creative endeavors, not just the movie business, but advertising, science, astronauts, you name it. And inspired by the force of imagination is what, our key slogan is, and we really mean it.
Well, this museum definitely is incredibly inspiring, both in terms of Star Wars and your dedication to it.
We're actually not at the end of the museum.
There's more.
There's a little bit behind the red curtain. Want to take a look?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Let's see what's behind the curtain. Sounds like a TV show, huh?
Behind curtain number one.
Welcome to the Tantive 4.
It's the blockade runner.
It is indeed the blockade runner. It's a hallway that was built by the R2 builders for Celebration 4. And we took it over, expanded it, and made it fit in here. So it gives you the feel that you are actually aboard a ship and going into another galaxy.
Wow.
And then there's a little bit more.
There's more.
There's another door. It's sort of like one of those quiz shows, Whoosh!
The latest edition. One more room.
Well, at least for now.
For now, the annex.
Yes, the annex, we have the art gallery, so I've been collecting Star Wars art from the beginning. Now it's 3D art, Vader heads, skateboard decks, you name it, we've got it.
Thank you so much, Steve,
My
from
pleasure.
Rancho Obi-Wan. And where can people find out more information?
You can go online to www.ranchoobiwan.org and get all of the information about planning a visit here, seeing our schedule, and finding out how to sign up, even just as a member of Rancho Obi-Wan, and getting a membership kit, which includes all sorts of cool stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve.
My
as
pleasure.
far as high-functioning hoarders go, you're one of the most impressive we've met.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next time.